Welcome to this introductory video on how to use RockForm Designer. We're going to be making this rock we see in front of us. The one on the left is the high poly version at around 4 million tries. The one on the right is the low poly version at around 700. So I will show you the process for how we get there. If you have RockForm installed, just go to the side panel and go to RockForm and then import assets. You'll see this sample scene that has a bunch of the assets that import with RockForm. We're just going to ignore most of that and hide it because we're going to be starting from scratch. So click the default cube and then come up here and click create RockForm, and voila, we have a rock. I'm going to change this lamp to a sun so we can see it better. So what RockForm is doing is selecting this guide object, which we have as the default cube, and then it's instancing these shapes in these shape groups onto that cube. If we click debug instances, we can see how that looks. And with debug off, what RockForm is doing is just remeshing it into one volume. So the next thing we want to do is introduce some more detail, and there's two ways of doing that. We can decrease the voxel size, so with smaller voxels you see more detail come into the mesh. Or the second way of doing it is enabling subdivisions and increasing the subdivisions. Now what's the difference? Well, sub-D just adds more density, and the voxel size actually changes how much this conforms to these shapes. So if you increase the voxels too much, it just turns into a blob, which we don't want most of the time. So I like to have a middle ground where I change the voxels to 0.1 and the subdivision is good at 1, and that gives us good enough of a preview to where we can now look through these different shape groups and get a feel for where we want to start. So most of these groups, there was a lot of trial and error in designing them to see really what was unique. So there's a lot of options here that really offer a good starting point depending on what kind of terrain you're trying to match, whether it's mountain peaks or whether there's slabs. And there's a lot of shapes where you can start with a good point and then change the transforms of those shapes. So you see kind of the quick instant results you can get just by doing that. I can change this back to boulders. So these transform options, if it's a bit slow for you, well, let's change the rotation. If it's a bit laggy, what you can do is turn the debug instances on and then change it, and then turn debug instances off. So if you have a low performant computer, then that's a good option to do. So we're going to leave that off. And then once we have the shape chosen, the shape group chosen, which I won't get into it here, but you could also create custom shape groups and make it however you want. We can come down to the textures. So RockForm includes a bunch of textures, and these are all displacement textures. These are provided by this creator DRF, and there's an affiliate link up here. If you click on that, we can see his ArtStation, and he has a very large library of a whole bunch of seamless 4K textures for organic material or rock material, and he has a bundle for everything, super reasonably priced for what you get. So he was nice enough to let me include his textures in RockForm. And if we skip through some of them here, we can see some of the variation that we can get. And it's pretty fun trying to just mess around and see how many variants you can make. There's a bunch of transform settings down here, which I won't get into. The most important ones are probably strength, which you can increase the strength or decrease. and you'll want to do that depending on what the texture is and what the scale is. And if we come down to the displacement scale, then that will obviously affect the scale. With certain textures, you might want to increase and decrease the scale. It all depends what you choose. You could choose a second option for a texture and combine them in all sorts of ways. You can invert it and rotate it, but we won't get into any of that now. I'll just show you the process for what comes next, and that is the material settings. So if we come down to the material panel, we can see that we have a base, a cover A, and a cover B. The base is what's on the bottom, of course. We could change a whole bunch of other properties here, including like influence by occlusion and other settings. Then there's the two covers, which they're pretty much interchangeable, except cover A covers cover B. And right now cover A is set up as grass, but you can set it up as snow or whatever you'd like to do. And cover B I have set up as like an under dirt and crevice kind of dirt at the moment, but you can turn that off or turn it on. You can change that to like a layer of ice or whatever you want to do. Or if you want to bring it into substance, of course that's an option too. Figure not everyone has access to it, so I took the time and built this pretty flexible master material. So after you choose the master material, the next step is just to create a low poly version. So click the button, and then once you see this come up for the decimate ratio, you can just drag this out, and this is going to be our low poly version. Now 26,000 faces is not low poly, so we want to crank this down even more, say 0.0025, and you can see our new faces is going to be 658, so you say yes, that looks good. And then we have a low poly version, and let's go over to the UV editor. So let's just do a smart unwrap for now. Obviously, if you're doing this for real professionally, you'd want to cut your own seams most likely and really pack it in using a third-party packer to be more efficient with it. So, and that's pretty much that. So let's skip over to the other file that I already have set up and show you the result here again. So we have this, which has been unwrapped, and this high poly version is baked down to the low poly. I use the add-on called Bake Wrangler. It makes life a whole lot easier. You can bake all these things in Blender natively, but it's a huge pain if you've ever tried. So Bake Wrangler makes it a lot more streamlined. You just set up your materials like seen, bake, and it comes out pretty much perfectly fine. So I exported all those textures and then created a new material, which is this, then imported them all and set it all back up. And that's how we were able to see this low poly result. That's pretty much all you do. So there's really no limits to it. And you could take that same rock that you exported and throw it in a scene, export it for a game engine with all its textures, use it in the background of a video, whatever you're doing. And that's how you use RockForm. Thanks for watching. I will make more advanced tutorials, and if you have any questions of how to make anything else, I'm happy to make dedicated videos for that. There's really no limit to what you can do. You can import your own textures and use your own displacement maps. You could even make stylized assets really easily. I'll do a separate video on that. And yeah, so you can find it on Superhive or Gumroad, and I appreciate any feedback that you have. But thanks again for watching.